You are now live.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a new edition of Real World News TV. I'm one of your co-hosts, Reggie Kearney. We have with us Derek Terry, and all the way from Vegas, we have Tony Breedlove. So, guys, how y'all doing tonight?
You want me to go first? Oh, wow.
I don't know about the gentleman down there in the corner.
Yeah, I am under the weather, so I'm feeling a whole lot better than I did yesterday. But yeah, as you can see, I'm live from the den. I'm literally in the bedroom on the chair. But as soon as this gets off, I'm getting that heavy dose of legal drugs, and I'll be asleep.
Well, at any time that you feel that you need to duck out, you do so.
Oh, believe that. You just, yeah, you'll see me.
Yeah.
You won't see me. You know what I mean?
Appreciate it. Well, tonight, the topic pretty much describes the show tonight that what we're going to be discussing. Very lively show. Dealing with, in a sense, dealing with the color of justice, okay? And we want to hit on the fact that there's a lot of issues that surround this topic, it's like the disparities in the sentencing guidelines that take place throughout the country, the unfairness in the legal system, things of that nature. But it always comes down to the fact that it affects the African American community or community of color worse than it affects the white community. But before we get started, I got to make a disclaimer here. I am a member of the judicial system, and we try to, and I have a task of upholding the Constitution and the laws. So I'm coming tonight as a citizen, okay, to discuss this because I think most African Americans in the judicial system probably feel the same way that I feel, but the law is a law, and you have to try to uphold it. But in a lot of cases, when it comes to the white counterparts, they kind of dispense justice as they see fit, and each judge has the same right to do the same thing. But we can start off by just looking at the case, the Manafort case, and comparing it to cases of that what African Americans do. I'll start off by saying, you look at 4 years for Manafort, and I think in New Jersey it was a person stole $100 worth of quarters from a laundromat, and they're looking at 4 years. Okay, let's go figure. You all thoughts?
Yeah. So even in addition to that, though, guys, we had. I hate to bring up Justice Smollett again, but in his case, he hasn't been sentenced yet. But for the crime of faking a hate crime, 16 counts. I mean, how do you get 16 counts out of that? So it's real disparagement, huge disparagement. What do you think, Mr. Terry?
When I look at it, I don't want people to think that, and I know nobody on here is condoning people as far as what they've done wrong or allegedly done wrong. What we're trying to say is, the crime should fit the time, regardless of the color, regardless of your demographics, regardless of your how you financially fit. And it's just unfortunately that we see a lot of injustices in the world. And, it goes back to, well, here's my disclaimer. I'm an educator, but I'm speaking as an individual, as a parent who has witnessed a lot of kids of color unjustly get punishments that are far worse than their white counterparts or non-black counterparts for doing the same thing. No, believe me, there's evidence out there to support it. So anyone on here who thinks I'm lying, ask for the Freedom of Information Act. I guarantee you'll find it. I guarantee you. So that's where I'm at on it.
Reggie? Yeah. Well, I'm not a judge. I'm not a teacher. I am a citizen. I think that counts for a lot. And I am a Black woman, and I have a Black son. And the thought that he could do the same crime, God forbid, because he's a good guy, but God forbid he was to do the same crime as his white counterpart, that he would be sentenced 20 times more time, or 20 times more time for the same crime. I mean, I don't understand how there is this unevenness. I don't understand how the disparagement is there when we talk about justice for all, right? Because that's what justice is that it's supposed to be. And let me read the definition: conformity of truth, fact, or reason. It doesn't say conformity of truth, fact, and reason if you're white, and then other if you're Black or of color. I don't get it. I don't get how there could be such a difference in sentencing or even indictments when we talk about Blacks versus white. How do we come up with that?
Well, one of the things you have is the prosecutors are always trying to push, they're pushing the envelope. And when you look at Smollett, I just think the envelope has been pushed quite heavily, because, I mean, what he did, if he did do it, and it's alleged that he did do it, he's still innocent, it doesn't warrant, 16 indictments, okay? More like a misdemeanor, smack him on the hand, fine him. If he pleads guilty, and let him go. Okay, I think the punishment is coming. I think the indictments are coming along because of the fact of who he was, okay, and what it portrayed, okay, and the things that took place within that whole 2 or 3 days that whole situation happened, So I think at the end of the day, if it goes to court, I think a lot of those indictments would be thrown out.
You think so?
Yeah, it's just too much. I mean, for what he did, come on now. I mean,
and I think the other thing too is because I don't know what the budgets are for the judiciary system, but it seems that we waste a lot of taxpayers' money having these trials. Where in the same degree, Jesse, right? Has his first name?
Jesse.
Yeah.
He wasted a lot of taxpayer dollars with this investigation, if it seemed true. So if anything, just have him pay back the money, you give him a misdemeanor, and you move on.
Yeah.
You're not looking. When you look at, and he's not a politician or anything like that. But if he was a politician, I guess you would raise the standards high. But should we do that or just base it on the individual? You're looking at federal versus state, and state versus local. So, it's how we prosecute things and whether or not we're prosecuting these crimes on the same level. And, if he was somebody who was on some small bit show on BET, it probably wouldn't even be on the air. But because it's Fox and Empire is one of the leading shows on there, that's why it made the news. So under normal circumstances, this wouldn't even be news. And I doubt the 16 indictments would even came down.
So then explain to me that how in Manafort's case, on a federal level, why isn't it that we can't hold him more accountable because of the position that he was holding at a federal level versus the state level?
Well, and I'll probably answer because Reg probably don't want to answer. Really, it's the judge's discretion. It's really up to the judge's discretion. So the judge has a lot of latitude and a lot of freedom when it comes to the sentencing. Of course, the prosecution. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just going by what I read and hear in Law and Order. But in most cases, the judges they have a lot of latitude. Of course, the prosecution will request the maximum sentence. But when you read some of the statements, especially the statement from this judge, he pretty much said that Manafort lived a good life And I was like, how the world did you get that? You know, that's pretty much, I mean, if you
But
sum
what
it all
does
up.
that have to, right, but what does that have to do with the crimes that were committed?
Well, based on that, he's saying, look, I don't know. To me, I was kind of puzzled myself how he got such a light sentence when you look at, you know, I've known the Detroit mayor, you know, he committed a crime, but his crime was nowhere near as just messed up as Manafort. But and then you're looking at an official, you're looking at someone who's elected to office, and when you're elected to office, people entrust that you're going to be there to serve the people, not yourself. And but you know they have these things in the books, but I think there's like a small disclaimer saying, okay, you get this amount of years unless you are, and in some cases, most of the time, it's unless you are black, expect to get a lighter sentence. I don't know.
With the mayor in Detroit, he got 27 years for his crime. You know, he's still trying to get out. You know, and it doesn't look like he's going to get out. You know, unfortunately, Kim Kardashian won't go out and help him. You know, but the bottom line comes down to something else you got to realize too. On the federal level, you have judges that, you know, if you're a judge, you're supposed to be nonpartisan if you're a judge, okay? But this judge was appointed by a Republican president, you know, because he is a Republican, you know, when you know, pull back the drapes, you know, and he's, you know, helping out another Republican. And that's what he's doing. That is what he's doing.
Yeah, but see, to me, I think that justice should be justice when we talk about sentencing for crimes committed against humanity or crimes committed in the instance of political issues. It should be the same all across the board. You know, whether it be state, federal, or otherwise. I just believe that a crime is a crime. And if you have gone against what has been set out for you to do legally, I just think that there should not be that gray area. I mean, take a case in point. So a white man selling cocaine or crack or whatever we want to call it, selling cocaine, a black boy or black man selling cocaine or crack or whatever we want to call it. The white boy gets a slap on the hand. He might get about 10 years. He might get 5 years probation, and he might get time served for the time that he has been sitting for waiting for his trial, right? A black boy or a black man that comes along that has done the same crime is going to get the max thrown at them, because you have people who are sitting today in prison who have committed far less crimes than what we're talking about when we talk about political issues, or even in the case of Jussie Smollett, that have done far less but have gotten the maximum of whatever was on the books to be the punishment of that crime. You know, you've got people who have been sent up the river for a third strike, for maybe that third strike might have been, you know, they might have stole a videotape, because I've heard that in the news. They might have stolen food because they were hungry, but they get 20 years. But you've got a person who is working under the commission of who is now the president, then candidate Trump, who gets 4 years for money issues, laundering, lying to federal agents. He gets 4 years. So how does that work? But I'm going to ask that question to Reggie, because as a judge, how does that work?
Well, you have that discretion, okay? When it comes down to it, the judge has the final say so on what your sentence is going to be. I mean, you can look at some of the cases of the sexual assault cases out in California, where the judge, you know, gave the college student a very light sentence. Okay, when I talk light sentence, it was 30 days or something like that. It was an embarrassment to the system, because he allowed a young man to get off scot-free. So, you know, and once the judge makes that decision, you know, unless the prosecution is willing to appeal the decision of the judge, is pretty much going to stand. You know, like this judge with Manafort said that Manafort wasn't a drug dealer. So why should you punish him harsher, you know, tougher than what you're going to punish a drug dealer? You know, that's the attitude. But it's Republican.
Because there were crimes against the U.S.
Yeah.
Those were crimes that cost taxpayers money.
Again, a Republican appointee looking out for a Republican that's under the White House coming out from a Republican president. You know, and what's going to happen? He's going to get his due justice in New York, in the state of New York. That's where the fireworks. You know, because you got a young sister up there who's itching to get him into get Trump and all his cohorts into court in New York, state of New York.
You know, for me, honestly, and like I said, I don't know too much about judges and the judicial system, but I do feel that when being appointed, even selected, that your party affiliation should not even be mentioned. And I look at it like the Board of Education. The Board of Education, typically you're nonpartisan. No one needs to know what you are because you're making decisions that can affect everyone. And the same thing with a judge. A judge is making decisions that affects everyone, given the guidelines of the law, which he or she is giving to them. So when they're making these decisions, you know, we look at the case, and I don't know the lady's name. I think she was a teenager who had killed, I think, a infant and 2 other people. I guess she was texting or whatever, and she got probation. Now, I'm not saying that this 17-year-old should have spent the rest of her life in jail, but she's spending no time in jail whatsoever, where there's been countless Black males who've been put in jail for marijuana, 15, 16 years old, for 5, 10 years, where we couldn't just give them rehab or something like that, rather than give them 5, 10 years. They didn't kill anybody.
They would the white boy, though.
Yeah, and even the case that I think at Baylor, you know, basically raped the girl and received no jail time whatsoever. So, you know, for people to sit here and argue, well, you always say it's a racial thing. Then show me the stats that support it, and then we won't talk about it. People say, oh, you should be talking about it. I just show me the stats that support it. If you are the type of person who believes in the rule of law, then everyone should be prosecuted and given the same amount of jail time per the crime. And we know that's not happening.
Right, but see, and that then brings a question because, and this will be a question on a legal standpoint, and maybe you can answer this for me or not, Reggie, because you are part of the, you know, judicial system. But when you have cases that come up in front of the courts, in front of judges, and they look at the crime, don't they go back and they look at case study or case precedents in order to be able to make a decision on how the sentencing is actually handed down?
Well, depending on there's a comparison in the cases, you know, sometimes, you know, they will go back and look at a case just to try and get a feel for it and see how that person was sentenced and everything. Okay. And a lot of times, you know, if you got a good defense lawyer, he's going to pretty much have already researched that before he comes into court. Okay. And pretty much he'll tell the judge, you know, well, based on this case that happened in 1957, then, you know, this person shouldn't get no more than what this person get, you know, and the judge is taking into consideration, you know, and the judge will probably go back in the chambers and read over that case just to make a fair decision, you know, as far as how to sentence him and everything.
Okay, so I asked that question because I had a follow-up question that is particularly to that, to case precedents. So in the case of Manafort, when we're talking about federal crimes that he has committed and he has been indicted and sentenced to, when that judge sentenced him to this 4 years, 20 years down the line, someone can come along with the same crimes, and the judge in that case can then use case precedents on what was handed out to Manafort, can he not?
He can. He can throw the book at him. When you go back and you look at the mayor of Detroit, you know, he should have used that case as a case to follow. You know, when you look at the money involved in it, you know, the prosecution was looking for 10 years, okay, and I think Mueller was looking for more. But when it came down to it, it was a political thing.
But they still have I think he gets tried again, I think, next week in another court for something. I haven't been following that much, but I do know that he has another sentence hearing for something else. You know, even when we look at, you know, does the crime fit the punishment? You know, we look at, you know, Crystal Mason, the lady who had put in the provisional ballot, who got 5 years in jail.
Right.
I said, are we serious? For a provisional ballot, you're gonna give a person 5 years? Which was a mistake.
And they knew that it was a mistake. So
you cannot tell me that didn't have any racial overtone to it. It wasn't at 5 years. I'm sitting there, I'm like, come on, seriously.
Of course.
You know, so it's, and you know, as much as people want to sit here and say, well, she knew she was wrong. Even if she knew she was wrong, you think she deserved 5 years?
No.
I've known people who've been in jail for a year for domestic violence. How do you equate domestic violence
to an incorrect ballot? Yeah. See, it's there's real the scales are definitely not there. It doesn't balance. It does not balance. But then my question also would be to either one of you or both of you is that how do we change this just as everyday American people? Because, you know, we not only put political we put the politicians in office that we see in state and federal. We also put in office judges. They come down to a vote as well. But how do you know who you're getting when you vote for these people? Because
I think you don't. I'm saying, even when you look at, probably one of the few times I'll say, yay, Trump. But when you look at prison reform, this is something that could have been done 8 years ago. But guess what?
Right.
The Republicans were not going to give Obama credit for prison reform. They simply were not.
Yeah.
And he had been fighting for it, but why, you know, they made it a note. We're not going to give him something that's going to make him look good. And prison reform was an easy fix because there was enough data there to support it. So I think now that we have the prison reform, let's start looking at these cases where you have people in jail, you know, rightfully so, but they shouldn't be there for the period of time that was casting them by judges. And unfortunately, you have very limited power over the judges. You know, it's hard to get them off the bench.
Right.
Unless they die or retire. And so you're not going to change their mood. The only thing you can ask for is change the venue. So if you have a judge who has a history of that, you know, data can support that. But, you know, I'm pretty sure these judges are smart to a degree and they kind of balance their stuff out. Who knows?
But what good is prison reform if you've got a slew of Republicans in office who are actually, you know, putting together this, you know, reversion of prison reform, taking credit for it or not? What good is it if they don't give a shit whether or not black folks are in jail or not?
Well,
time will tell. Time will tell. I'm saying they just put it in there, so you have to give it a year or two. And if it's gotten worse, then guess what? It was all just for photo op, election points. We have to see.
Let me say this: there hasn't been any prison reform. Just because you give 3 people, you reduce sentences, or you let them out of jail, that's not prison reform. We got to go back and look at the Democrats. Is the reason we're talking about this today, okay? With Bill Clinton. That's where the prison enforcement criminal law enforcement came along, getting tough, tough laws, getting tough on African Americans, basically. And this is something that's going to drag into the election this year. So, I mean, it's nothing on paper about prison reform as of yet. They're going to keep going. I think what Trump is trying to do is garner votes in the African American community by, being selected. This person, let this person go, let that person go. We working on it, but you got a lot of guys that are in prison on marijuana charges. Okay, they have served more time than what they need to be served. True prison reform would be passing a law, time served, reducing these laws on the marijuana possession, and letting those guys out. That's true prison reform. Just, let me say something, okay?
But they think that just because they put programs in place for those serving time is called prison reform. It's not.
No.
That has a lot to do with the case law.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, they've got to go back. Both parties, they got to work together, because marijuana is going to be legalized in the next 10 or 15 years in all 50 states. I'm pretty sure. But at this time, they need to go back and get these guys out who got picked up for having an ounce or a dime bag or a nickel bag or a cigarette with them, and let them out. Okay. And that's got to be done. They've got to go back and look at the time they put in these laws. Now, when it comes to murder and all that kind of stuff, throw the book at them. Okay. DUIs, throw the book at them. But the thing is, you got to look at some of this stuff that's out here now. Jaywalking. You won't get a year for jaywalking. Some places you probably will.
Right.
If they enforce it. So
well, it could be look, as simple as jaywalking,
mm-hmm.
and you've had 2 strikes.
Yeah.
And now you're in for 25 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that the laws have to be changed by the case,
mm-hmm.
By the crime. Otherwise, there is no such thing as prison reform. There is no
mm-hmm.
such thing as justice. Because if you don't do it that way, then you're still going to end up in the same situation where we are right now, or it's going to be so much far worse. You think that we got a problem now with Black folks being put in prison for, jaywalking.
Mm-hmm.
Just wait. Just keep playing. It's going to get really, really bad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean,
I think another part of it is when, to some degree, just folks in general just stop with the stupid crimes. That would eliminate a lot of.
That's a start.
Yeah. Just stop with, regardless of what race you are, just stop with stupid crimes. And you can't get upset if you caught stealing and you on camera and say, "Why I got to go to jail?" I said, "Because you stole." So and I think with any judge, and I can't speak for anyone particular, but for any judge, that it's my hope when they're looking at the crime, they're also looking at individual, but making sure that they're trying to stick to the norm when it comes to sentencing, making sure it's not extreme. Me personally, I look at, is it going to be a burden on society to have this person out? Or would it be more beneficial being in jail for maybe 2 months and then coming out and do community service and rehabilitate? That all that plays in, those non-violent offenses. We're talking about white collar crimes. Excuse me. And unfortunately, a lot of these white collar crimes, they affect not only that person, but affect a lot of people. When you look at the scams, you look at the money, the lives that is touched, a lot of times families, they can't get that stuff back. So, when you have like the little Ponzi schemes and you got people who just give up all their money, you're not getting that money back. How could that person get the money back if you in jail? Like I think Manafort is supposed to pay 50 million or 20, I don't know what it is, in restitution. How's he gonna pay it back if he's in jail? Maybe sell off his assets, but I don't know if it's gonna equate to that much.
Yeah. Because the cost. Oh, go ahead, Reggie. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm looking on the internet. Okay. The First Step Act. Then, okay, so, Trump comes out and does a little something. But then he puts it into his budget, only gives it $14 million for 5 years.
Right.
Yeah, $14 million a year for 5 years. When initially it was set up for $75 million a year for 5 years. Okay.
That was in the Obama administration, right?
Yeah, when it was first set up. Okay. So he wants to do prison reform, but at the same time, he's going to reduce the amount of money that goes towards the act. So $14 million is not a whole lot to get things done. Okay.
No, not when it costs the federal prison system $6.5 million to house these prisoners, $36,000 per prisoner per year. So no, that's not enough to do anything. Shh, please.
Wait, let's take that back for a second. The First Step Act did come out of that is what Trump passed, okay? The First Step Act, you know. But as always, you know, he promises to put a lot of money to it, but when the budget comes out, it's been cut. You know, so it's going to take more than $14 million a year to affect any type of prison reform. And then you got the Kardashians, you know, I think a lot of it's been pushed by Kanye West and his wife, you know, because I think they got this fixation by trying to be like Ivanka and her husband, you know, and they're going around pushing, and they're going and pushing their agenda on Trump. He likes it, okay? So he's willing to support them. But what if Beyonce and Jay-Z went to him? Would he really listen to them and, you know, help a person out?
No.
Because look how much, you know, look over the 2 years he's been in office, look how much talk is going on about prison reform. But Kim Kardashian goes into the White House, sits down and talks to Jared for 1 minute, and the next minute you know, you got a person that's let out of prison for running an empire that was almost $100 million over the lifetime of that empire.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, so I think a lot of it, you know, color plays a role. Your status as far as having money plays a role too. And who gets the job done.
Yeah.
Now as we go back on Manafort, you know, as I now recall, you know, with another judge, he can face up to 10 years. So, you know, I don't excuse me, I don't know who the judge is, but the judge, you can't tell me that the judge was not paying attention to this case, or anybody within his circle, his or her circle was paying attention to the case and said, wow, Manafort got 4 years for this. And whether or not the decision that this judge is about to put down, is he going to let it run with that sentence, or is he going to go ahead, he or she going to go ahead and tag on 10, 5, or whatever years? So,
yeah.
And honestly, you know, I don't think he should spend the rest of his life in jail, but I do think that he should spend enough time in jail to where when he comes out, you know, he's barely, he would not be as influential as he was because he's too old. So I don't know how old he is now, but I'm thinking if you give him 10 years, he would be what, almost 80 when he gets out?
64 now.
64.
Oh, he's 64.
So I would say keep him there till, you know, 78, 79. And if that doesn't humble you, I don't know what will.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, you know, the reform is neat. It's got to be an even playing field out there, okay, for everybody, from the misdemeanors all the way to the felonies. There's got to be a level playing field out there. You know, you can look around. I mean, one case in point here in Maryland, young man was sent up for killing a young lady. He got 15 years, but because of good behavior, he's out in 8 years. He's back on the streets now. Okay.
And did not have to register as a sex offender. So I think there's something, I don't know,
really?
There's something shady about that. I don't know what it is. I don't know if he helped out with the feds for another case, but there is something definitely shady about that one. I don't know all the details. It just sounds too smooth of a deal. You kill someone, you rape someone, and then you get out after 8 years, and you don't have to even register as a sex offender too.
No.
And
Are you
that was a black man, and that was a black man. So, and
are you
so,
kidding me?
Yeah,
Nope.
and that was a black man that did that. So
right here in Maryland.
I don't. To me, there's something shady about it. I really haven't dug into it. We get so much news about violence every day. It's hard to keep up.
Really?
But, as Reggie said it, that's what I remember. Like, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and see, prison reform for me is it's more to it than just reducing sentences or getting sentences evened out to dish out punishment the same in all cases. What are you doing behind the bars to make these young men or old men productive citizens in the community? That young man who just got out after serving 8 years of a 15-year sentence, what will he be able to do productive in the community? Okay, because first of all, his picture's all over the newspaper and everything, so everybody knows it's going to be hard for him to get a job. So how do you monitor him and make sure he's being a productive citizen in society?
Right.
My bet is 50-50 chance that he might end up back in prison, not for murder, hopefully, but
he'll reoffend in some way.
Yeah, like robbery or shoplifting or something like that, just because he can't get a job. And he's not going to be able to get a job because everyone knows about this case. So what kind of training did he get in prison to reform himself? And that's, for me, reform deals with a lot of different things. You read about this first act and things of that nature. It's all about reduced sentences
but call it what it is, because that is not reform.
Right.
That is just what you just said. What Trump is doing is he's rewriting stuff. He's reinitiating things, putting things in different places. What he's doing is not it's not a bill, not a law that says let's put more programs in the prison. Let's do some sort of survey or take a look at what these prisoners are doing while they're behind bars, so when they do come out, that there's less chance that they'll reoffend. That is not what he's writing this for.
Right.
I think
another thing of means for me.
Well, to me, the bigger part of prison reform really stems around money.
Okay.
And it's a billion, couple, I don't know how, maybe it's 50 billion, whatever, but it's in the billions when it comes down to the industry, because it costs, I don't know what the average is, maybe $32,000 a year to maintain, the maintenance of a prisoner. And that's more than it costs a year to think about this. And this is where, I get a little perplexed, that it costs more to house and do whatever you have to do for a prisoner than it does to fund a single student in school. No student does it cost $31,000, $32,000 on a secondary level to fund a prisoner.
Right.
So think about that. If we're spending that much money on a prisoner, you best believe there's some private money coming in, because that's a lot of money to spend. Think about it. Someone.
But what are you spending it on? It's not as if, like I said, there are viable programs that are behind bars.
Well, that's the thing. I don't know what to spend on, but it
costs them $36,000 a year.
Well, they're probably looking at food salaries of the correctional officers and things of that nature. Averaging that out.
But that's the same thing. That's the same thing that goes to the account when you deal with teachers.
Yeah.
So what you're saying, and it's not to take anything away from correctional officers or anything like that, but when you look at the pay scale, it's somewhere around the same when it comes to teachers. So it's not like it's a lot, but somebody has to make money off it. Some of these prisons are privatized. Remember, the government still is in the business of making money. They can sell old aircraft or fighter jets and all that to foreign nations. So when you look at the cost, just to put a prisoner away for a year, that's more than your average. That's probably 2 or 3 students, depending on what school district you're in. To me, that's outrageous.
More than a lot on average out of how many people make that money. Just average everyday citizens.
That's outrageous. I'm saying, when you look at the numbers, it costs more to put a person in prison than it would to employ a person minimum wage with full benefits.
Exactly. Yeah, it doesn't add up for me.
Yeah, and see, he wants Betsy to cut education, you know, the funding for the Department of Education. So if you cut the funding for the Department of Education, you're going to have more problems on the street with these young people, because the money is not going to be there to hire teachers, to teach these kids, make these kids productive citizens coming out of high school and going to college and stuff, and pushing them to go to college. Okay, you know, these teachers struggle already, having to buy their own supplies and stuff. And then you want to cut the budget even more.
Right.
The federal government, they really don't. Well, from my research, the federal government gives maybe 5 to 10% of the budget to each school system, and that's mainly through your Title I schools. I think where a lot of that federal money comes in is when you're dealing with your colleges, where they need the money, but it's still money that the states count on to offset their own budget. So, if he's looking to get rid of Department of Ed, he's looking to get rid of 5-10% of the budget, which is a lot of money.
Yep.
Now, where that money be reallocated to, that's a whole different story.
But see, he's cutting budgets. He's cutting budgets to build a wall, and that's what he's doing. You know, he wants to cut Medicare, Medicaid. He even wants to cut Social Security.
But that would take an act of Congress. So I seriously doubt they're going to mess with that.
Yeah, it'll be a stalemate. The Senate will never vote for it.
No, they won't do it because they don't want to be voted out. I'm saying I don't care what party affiliation you are. You cut out somebody's Medicaid, Medicare, old folks get it. So people who have disabilities get that stuff. So, it has no party affiliation when you're dealing with that. Social Security, same thing. So I don't see it happening. I'm saying it's a nice selling point for him, but I don't see it taking off anywhere.
I hope you're right.
Give me for a second.
I hope you're right. Dang, you guys both are coughing. Keep your cooties to yourself.
But check this out. Now, I'm looking at, Cory, there was an article in the Washington Post 2 days ago concerned, Cory Booker was saying that more steps need to be taken to, to affect prison reform or justice reform. Now, the First Step Act is an act that is going to, set a number of people free because of the simple fact they're looking at the discrepancies in sentencing. But isn't this the same act that Obama was trying to pass?
That is.
Yeah.
It is. In the same manner. In the same manner.
Well, Mitch McConnell made it very clear. They're going to do everything they can do to make him a one-term president.
That didn't work.
It became second term, but it wasn't going to give him any glory or give him the potential to have glory unless it was in a bipartisan manner. I mean, very little of that.
Yeah. The article states there are more African-American men under criminal supervision there than there were slaves in 1850.
Wow. That's huge. That's big.
We hold the prisons down.
Please.
We just got to do better in our community. I know we can't depend on government. It's going to take the fraternities and sororities, the NAACP, the Urban League, the churches, things of that nature to get the prison, get our men trained on the street to do better. Okay, we've got to figure out a way how to provide jobs for our own community and make our own communities grow. We've got to make a change and make a difference ourselves.
I think one of the key things that we can do is really with education. And I know that you have to get the kids real early because I don't know the whole premise behind the bell curve. I remember it, but make a long story short, those fourth grade tests are critical in determining how many prison cells or how big prisons are, because they expect 10 years out, if a kid has a bad score, then they're more likely to commit a crime, because of their cognitive abilities. I don't believe in it, but when you look at, you look at an area where they have very, very poor test scores at 4th grade level, go back maybe 10 years ago, and then see if there's any prisons built in that area. They're likely to commit crimes built in that area. So I think what we need to do is make sure that, we are providing the kids with the education they need, but also to teach them how to deal with conflict resolution and time management, all those essential skills they'll need. So when they do become a teenager, they don't get bought into peer pressure, gangs, and all that, because everything that they're doing is for the betterment of their community. And I think if we can start doing that, then we can at least, within the community, without even relying on the government. These are things that we can do for ourselves.
Right. Wow. You guys have said a mouthful. Said a mouthful. And we have come down to probably about 5-7 minutes left for tonight. Reggie, you want to give us your final thought?
Yeah, I just want to give you one more statistic, and it says, we live in a nation that professes a sacred devotion to liberty and freedom. Yet, while we are 5% of the globe's population, we lock up 1 out of every 4 people incarcerated on planet Earth, and 1 out of every 3 women. That's some heavy stuff. This is America, okay? This is the United States. Like Derek said, a whole lot of money involved in the prison system, and people are getting rich off of it. So the idea is to try to keep criminals coming, keep people breaking laws so we can keep filling up the prisons,
Well, every day the prison system becomes more and more privatized.
Yeah.
It's a corporation now. It's not something that is just based on the punishment. It's based on the numbers that they can put in those cells, which means that it's the number that go into the rich folks' pockets.
Yeah.
So as long as we continue to look at, how things, and it goes in hand with what Derek was talking about education. But as long as we continue to do things the old way, not beyond our kids as to the rights and wrongs, those numbers are going to continue to go up. And one day your son or daughter is going to be the benefit of someone's bank account. You got to look at it that way too.
Yeah.
Because more and more prisons are being privatized. You have more privatized than you don't have. So, anyway.
Well, Obama tried to shut it down, and as soon as Trump got in office, he lifted that signature off the paper and put his signature down and said, "Look, open them back up. Let them go back into business. Let's keep building them."
Right. Right. Well, my brothers, let's get off of here early because I'm really feeling sorry for Mr. Terry. I really am. Did you take your med yet?
Nah, not yet.
Oh, you should have taken
not the one that's gonna knock me out. I took.
Oh, you should have taken it about 5-10 minutes ago.
Nah.
Then you would have fallen right.
No, because I have to get up and tend to my wife. I think she may have caught some of what I had.
Oh no.
She's in the other room. So,
jeez. You just spread your
well, that's why she went to the other room. And I was like, how you end up catching me? I've been by myself since Sunday night.
Oh.
Unless she snuck in late at night and cuddled, not in here, but I was so drugged up.
That's your little heart. Well, I hope you feel better. I really do.
I will. But definitely, I'm hoping. Like we still got topics out there, but these are just some topics I like to see. I would like to see that one we had discussed. Age is just a number, and it's not necessarily tied into R. Kelly. Just really talking about the historical context of that because it goes deeper than R. Kelly. Age is but a number has been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years. And then also something that a friend of mine brought up. Should Maryland be an open carry state? I was like, Because I've been in states where it's open carry, like Colorado. I don't know.
Like Nevada.
So, you know,
Nevada.
it's kind of strange for me at first. But then, you know,
Really?
you get used to it. Yeah, because I didn't know it was open carry. I was about to say, I said, he got a gun. I'm looking at the cop. He was like, yeah. I didn't know it was an open carry state till the cop told me. But then I remember that cop, he confronted someone and actually you have a permit. So it's almost like you open yourself up to like, what do you call it? Yeah. So it's like, you know, it's open carry, but, you know, I don't really think someone would be walking around without a permit, knowing a cop is right there.
Well, you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. Nevada's an open carry state. It's an open carry weapon state. Let's put it that way. Because I'm going to tell you this quick story before we get off. I was sitting outside one day. I was at work, you know, sitting out enjoying the sun, and I saw this young guy coming past me with a machete in a kind of like a belt loop or whatever, a machete, and he was getting on one of the buses, and I thought, what the hell? And I talked to one of the people at the job who handles our security, and he's like, it's an open carry state. What do we do? You know, I'm like, he shouldn't be able to get out because you don't know what his intentions are. A machete? A machete.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but you see people in the grocery stores with guns. It's the wildest thing.
I guess your crime rate is pretty low?
No, it's not. But the crime rate here is high, but it doesn't have anything to do with gun violence. You find a lot of stabbings, strangulations, things of that. You know, people lose their money and they just want to go and choke the shit out of someone.
maybe your law say if you shoot somebody, it's automatic 20, 30 years. Who knows? You know, lesser sentence if you don't use a gun.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, some of those topics, Derek, I think we're working on. You know, it's just we got to put it together and bring it to the people.
All right.
You know?
Well,
but we do hope
better. Glad I was able to stay up.
Oh, we're glad you did too. I was surprised.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Reggie Kearney, you ready to get out of here, sir?
Yeah, let's go.
As long as you don't have cooties, we cool.
That's right.
You've been watching Real World News TV with Reggie Kearney and also Mr. Derek Terry, who has graced us with his cooties. I'm just glad that he's that he's here, and I'm surprised he's here. But I'm really hoping that you feel better. Thank you so much for joining us tonight and tuning in. Thank you, Miss Jacqueline, also Miss Rose, and those who remain nameless that we couldn't see. We thank you, and we hope that you have a wonderful rest of your evening. Also, I'm going to invite you to come on back here with me, Yvonne Baker, and Mr. Chris Smith tomorrow night on Hot Topics Talk Radio. Show starts at 8 o'clock p.m. Pacific, 10 o'clock Central, and 11 o'clock on the East Coast. Also, make sure that you come on back here every Tuesday night at 5:30 p.m. Pacific, 7:30 Central, and 8:30 on the East Coast. Make sure that you always tune in right here on Facebook for Real World News TV. And we will see you guys back here next week. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will bid you good night. How's that?
Good night.
Peace and blessings.
Real World News TV, you are now clear. Good night, everybody.